Hey there, I'm Joshua Sheehan. Welcome to the RV Entrepreneur Podcast. The RV Entrepreneur is a community for RVers that are exploring ways to financially support themselves while living their RV life. And today we have the pleasure of talking with Joel and Deb Brettingen from Chasing RV Sunshine. Joel, Deb, and their spoiled dog Maya are a full-time RV couple with 53 years of combined law enforcement experience. They're 100% debt-free and recently retired, sold everything, and hit the road in their RV. They take finances very seriously and enjoy sharing their insights on financial freedom with the RV community. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode with Joel and Deb. It's really cool to hear how they planned long-term for their goal of being full-time RVers and how different choices they made along the way with budgeting and spending and formatting their life allowed them to hit the road debt-free with a fixed income and be able to thrive on the road. And the time is getting closer. The RV Entrepreneur Roundtable is happening September 7th through 11th in Montrose, Colorado. If you're interested in connecting with other like-minded individuals in a very intimate and discussional setting, make sure you check out the RVentrepreneur.com/summit to gather all the details for the upcoming roundtable. Before we jump into the episode, let's take care of our sponsor. The RV Entrepreneur Podcast is brought to you in part by RV Life Pro. Perfect for every RVer, you can plan your camping trips with RV Life Trip Wizard, then use RV Safe navigation with the RV Life GPS and Campgrounds app. Both are included in the RV Life Pro. Eliminate RV anxiety by knowing exactly where you'll camp, get fuel, and even grab lunch before you ever hit the road. RV Life has every campground, RV park, state park, and national park to fit your style. Plan your entire RV adventure, including fuel stops, rest areas, shopping, and entertainment. Go to RVLife.com and start your free 7-day trial or download the RV Life app from the App Store. Travel dreams made simple with RV Life. Now let's jump into the episode. Joel and Deb, welcome to the RV Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm excited to talk with you guys today. You've got an exciting journey of how you got on the road. Give me a brief background. Who are Joel and Deb?
We are Joel and Deb Brettingen. We have been full-time RVing for almost a year now. We're both retired from law enforcement, and we retired on October 1st, both of us. I had 23 years of law enforcement service and
I had just under 30.
We are both originally from the state of Wisconsin and have lived here our whole entire lives and really enjoy Wisconsin in the summer and do not want to be here in the winter as it's very cold and snowy.
So you guys are coming at full-time RV travel from a little different angle than a lot of folks. I assume that you have a retirement coming in from those jobs?
I reached my retirement age in September of last year, so that's why we retired in October, and we're living off of my pension currently. Deb will eventually get a pension when she reaches retirement age, but currently we're just living off my pension.
And is that enough to fund your entire year of full-time RV travel?
It is, because we did a lot of planning to make sure that it would.
Let's talk about that. When did you know you were going to take off and do some full-time RV travel?
It was about 15 years ago. We were out to dinner with some friends, and she was kind of upset and told us that her husband had the craziest and dumbest idea she ever heard, where once they retired, they were going to sell everything and move into an RV and travel the country. We left that dinner, and on the way home, we both said, that's an amazing idea, and we should really look into that. And about 5 years ago, or it'd be 6 now, as we've been traveling the country for the last about 9 months, we put a 5-year plan into process. I let Joel talk about that a little bit.
We started seriously looking at it, like Deb said, about 5 years before we did go full-time. And the number one thing for me was the budget. Are we going to be able to make it work on my pension? And what do we need to do to make that happen?
So we started watching, I think, every YouTube channel that we could find, especially on budgeting, and ended up doing about 3 years of research before we actually found the type of rig and RV that we felt we would be best fitting for us, as we know that there is no such thing as a perfect RV out there. But we did find our RV and purchased it in January of 2020. When we first started dating, both of us had talked about being financially responsible and really wanting to do well with our money, and we both really believed in that. We had read a book that was called Smart Couples Finish Rich by David Bach, and that kind of started us on our path for financial freedom. We ended up leaving when we hit the road completely debt-free, and that also helps us with our journey and being able to afford our full-time lifestyle as well.
That's really cool. I'm excited to have this conversation dive more into the details because I think providing different avenues of how people can full-time travel is very important. You guys are doing some entrepreneurial stuff, and we'll talk about that down the interview a little bit. But really, that sounds like the way that you planned this was, we know we're going to have a set amount of money coming in from a pension. How can we design our life now and on the road to allow us to achieve this goal within those parameters? So looking back, when you decided, hey, we're going to do this when we hit retirement age and we're going to go out, we want to be able to do it on the one pension. And then when the other one kicks in, it's just going to be an extra buffer in the budget. How did you decide what to put away for those 5 years leading up to getting on the road?
Like Deb said, we started planning and putting money aside very early on in our careers through deferred comps and some Roth IRAs, which we didn't plan on taking any out when we were going RVing. So that's why we specifically designed our budget just around my pension. And so far that's true. And we hope that to be true, that we don't even want to touch that set aside money, leave that for some type of emergency fund or if something catastrophic happens.
So did you know at the point of, okay, we decided we're going to do this, we've got a deadline of when it's going to happen. Did you know what your pension amount was going to be at that point and what your monthly income was going to be reliable for when you left?
Yeah, so with the state of Wisconsin retirement system, when you start turning the age of 50, you can send in for estimates once a year after you turn 50. So they give you a very good idea of what your pension's going to be at any given time. So we set that for October of last year, and they gave a great estimate, and it was within $50 of what my pension ended up being. So that helped out a lot. Without that, it would have been very hard to plan for what the actual pension was going to be.
We also did meet with our financial advisor, and we do recommend anyone to have one, as a professional set of eyes on your money really assists you in your future goals and making sure that you're doing it correctly.
What were some of the goals that you had to meet before you left full time in order for this to be successful?
Being debt free was the number one goal. And the second main goal was making sure that our pension or my pension would cover all of our budgeted items. Like Deb said, we spent several years refining that budget and making sure that our expenses were going to be able to be within the parameters of that budget.
We did also start keeping track of every penny 2 years prior to going full time, because we felt that maybe we're not going to have our electric bill or, certain household bills and maintenance costs when it comes to owning a home. However, our lifestyle wouldn't change through groceries, possibly going out to eat, and other entertainment things, where we were thinking our cost would be very similar to that of what we did while living. And now, traveling for the last 9 months, we have found that they are very similar, and we were able to use that to help budget for our cost of RVing.
That was another one of our goals, is if we did do this, we didn't want to change the way we were living too much or drastically. It can be done, but we didn't want to do that.
What tools and tactics did you use to start tracking every penny? Because that's definitely something that if you're not doing it, it takes time to get into that practice and get into that habit. My wife and I use a program called YNAB where we enter all our receipts in after we spend it, and allows us to budget for the next month, and we really like it. But getting to the point of entering those things as you use a credit card or pay a bill is definitely a skill and a habit that you have to create. What worked for you guys?
It for sure is a skill and a habit, because although we were financially responsible, or we didn't track every dollar, we just made sure that we were meeting our goals leading up to going full timing. So we started watching several YouTube channels and got their spreadsheets and started entering our stuff into it. And then I found the app Every Dollar. We started using the free version of that. Now, we're not affiliated with that at all. We just found it very useful. And you can enter at the time of any purchase, you can enter it right there into the categories you want it to be. So it tracks it for you. And I found for myself, if I enter it immediately, then it'll actually get entered.
The other tools or whatever, it's just an Excel spreadsheet that was sent to us by another RV YouTuber that was offering it for free to everyone.
When you decided you're going to leave in 5 years, did you have debt at that point that you needed to then buckle down and tackle to make that goal? Or were you already on track to having that paid off by the time you were going to leave?
We were on track to have it paid off by the when we sold our house, we had owned it for 20 years and had paid that off outright. The only major debt that we did have was we owed some money on my 2015 Ford Edge, which ended up becoming our tow vehicle. But that was paid off once we sold our house.
And then did you use the profits from the house to buy your RV?
We did. Originally, we ended up, because we already owned our house outright. When we originally purchased our RV, we took out a first mortgage on our house as that had a lower interest rate, and bought the RV outright that way. And we ended up doing payments for a year on the first mortgage and ended up, once selling the house, paying it completely off.
Nice. So you used the leverage of the mortgage to be able to finance the RV in that gap year. And then once you sold the house, you paid everything off.
Exactly. Doing it that way had a lower interest rate, and it allowed us to pay the original owner off immediately, so we didn't have to deal with payments to them.
Has there been any difficulty keeping to that predetermined budget that you started working on 5 years ago while on the road? I know for us, getting on the road, the expenses and the experiences were much different than we anticipated. What was it like for you guys?
We did recognize that in the first few months we were kind of on vacation mode and trying to do and see everything that we could. Not having to work, that was a new feeling, and getting used to that is what are we going to do every day if we can't be out playing? So it did, the first few months it was a little different, and we have also noticed that when we meet up with friends or other people, that our restaurant and entertainment budget goes up a little bit. But we try to manage that through other things like the fuel budget or the grocery budget or whatever it may be. So we've been pretty good at staying in budget. The only major expense that we had set money aside for outside of our monthly budget was a lithium battery upgrade that we did do when we were in Reno with Battleborn. We were not affiliated with them, but we were in Reno, so we decided to do that. And again, we had that money set aside as a capital expense outside of our operating budget.
Do you happen to know how much are you putting away for upgrades and or maintenance on your rig? As with a house, there's constant upgrades, but in contrast to a house, you're also moving your house at 65 miles an hour down the road.
Right.
Things tend to break. You've got a motor that's being worn and worn out.
Correct.
How are you guys planning for that on a fixed budget?
Yeah, so we do have that within our monthly operating expense as an ongoing $300 a month maintenance. If we go over that, then again, like you said, we do have an emergency fund for capital items if need be, but we did budget $300 a month for maintenance and upgrades.
So you got rid of a house. Talk to me about the downsizing process. How did that play into getting on the road? Did you keep anything in storage? What's the long-term goal?
Everything that we researched for downsizing, we tried to start early. We thought we had, and then when it came down to it, all of a sudden it was like, where did we get all this stuff? But we followed 3 simple rules, or actually 4 rules, where it was either give away, sell, throw out, or donate. We ended up donating a lot of stuff. Apparently nobody wants China anymore, and we had a full set. But we luckily surprised our nephew with grandma's china, and he was so excited. But it definitely was a process, and we recommend, if you're even thinking about going into RVing, start now with going through your clothes. We kept way too many clothes, and we can even go through the rig now and get rid of some stuff that we kept that we didn't think we were going to need. We thought we'd need it, but we didn't.
So, some good advice that we had learned from other full-timers was, like Deb said, start early, but start small. Just take a morning on a weekend and go through one particular room, and then wait till the next day or the next week and go through a separate room. So it's not so overwhelming and daunting task to think about it, doing it all at one time. We did, like Deb said, got down to when the house sold and we needed to be out by a certain date. That's when the rush took over. It was stressful because of the timing, but not actually for getting rid of the stuff or downsizing itself. We originally thought we were not going to have a storage unit and had started downsizing thinking that way, which was good because we got rid of stuff that we didn't need. Ultimately, a storage unit opened up at the campground we're at, so we did end up taking that just for some small things, but otherwise we don't have much left.
Yeah, we needed to keep a lawnmower to mow the lawn here. When we first researched having the storage unit, it was actually cheaper at the time because of the cost of materials that had gone up so high that keeping and having the storage unit for 10 years was cheaper than actually building a shed for ourselves.
You guys are at a seasonal site during the summer months, and then you're traveling and doing a snowbird thing on the cold months, correct?
Correct. Both of our families live in this area. My dad and Joel's parents and brothers' family, and my brother's family as well. So it's kind of nice to come back to Wisconsin during the summer when it's super nice here, and really nice to leave in the winter. We do not miss the snow. And one of the best things that we threw out during downsizing was
The snow shovels for sure.
Did that plan of being stationary for a few months over the nice months in Wisconsin and then traveling and doing excursions over the winter, did that play a big portion into your budgeting?
It certainly did play a portion. I wouldn't say it was a major portion, but it was taken into account. The seasonal site we have here, we pay for yearly, and we can use it year round. Of course, during the winter when the water's shut off, it's pretty difficult, but we can come and go as we please from here. So if we do need to stay stationary a little bit longer to save money on fuel or whatever it might be, we have that option, which definitely, like I said, played into our decision to keep this site.
Had you guys RV'd before you got this rig? Before you decided to live full time in an RV?
No, we had not. Both of our families had pop up campers as kids, and we loved camping. And we have gone on tent camping and canoeing trips together and stayed in friends' campers at some country music festivals. But other than that, no, we had not. We've never owned an RV. This is our first RV and hopefully our last.
How did you go into that buying process knowing that it was going to be your full time home? And also knowing you didn't have any experience with a full-size RV that's got systems of support, water, sewer, power, all that stuff. How did that play into your buying decision of knowing you're going to be selling your sticks and bricks and buying this RV to live full-time with the intention of going out and finding a condo in some place with a little less snow? What was your buying process like?
Well, that's definitely one of the things that kept us up at night besides budget was the rig itself and what it was going to be like. So when we started talking about our 5-year plan, a major portion of that was researching RVs. We weren't sure what kind or what brand we wanted, whether it was going to be a fifth wheel or a tow trailer or a class C, B, or A. We hadn't researched it prior to that. So we started going to RV shows when we could, touring everything, of course, watching YouTube to try to do tours and find out what other people were doing helped out a lot. So we did finally narrow it down to a class A and a particular floor plan just by doing all that research. And once we knew that, then we started narrowing into finding the exact one.
Originally, we had 3 brands, which was Tiffin, Newmar, and Winnebago, that had a floor plan where we felt it was going to be just like living in a house for us and would work for the two of us with the way that we wanted to live on a daily basis. And eventually, we were able to narrow it down to our Tiffin Allegra Red 33AA that we purchased in 2020 in January, and was used. It was a private sale, and our rig is a 2018. It's 35 feet long and a diesel pusher.
And are you still happy with your decision?
Absolutely.
Yeah, the one thing that people say is there's no perfect rig, and we definitely agree with them with that. Just like there's no perfect house, you try to do your research and find out what's going to work best for you and go with it.
So knowing that you were saving up to pay off debt to be 100% debt free before you left on this trip, and then also budgeting for the rig itself, did you guys ever have any of those keeping up with the Joneses moments of, oh, we feel like we want to go do this, but in order to meet our budgeting goals, we need to abstain from certain things?
We have always been people that our ultimate plan was to do this and to be debt free. So we have learned since day one of our employments to put money away and not to be constantly buying things. We're never ones that had a lot of toys. We didn't own a boat or any cabins like a lot of our friends did. But I mean, we've learned or whatever that yes, you can go out and you can have fun and do things, but you need to be financially responsible and not buy things that you don't need and to rack up that debt. So we've always been ones that haven't cared about brand names. We want quality products that work and are reliable. So we've done a lot of research that way, where you see making sure that they're good quality companies with good customer services from other items that we've bought in the past, which is important to us.
Yeah, we are pretty good at balancing our wants versus our needs and trying to do that. And keeping up with the Joneses attitude would damper our budget, I'm pretty sure.
I would definitely agree with you there, Joel.
Yeah.
So knowing that you're going to have a fixed amount of income after you went full time, what are some of the ways that you've saved money on the road, or ways that you have considered saving money? Because obviously there's two parts of an equation, how much you're spending and how much you're not spending. What are some of the
Yeah.
ways that you guys decided on the road to make this lifestyle possible that you were not going to spend money or to save money?
One way is that we have learned to eat in, which we did a lot in our own home. And we really do like to cook with each other and make fabulous meals. And it's very easy to do so in the RV as well. But we've also found that if you are out in an area and want to explore, the best time to go out to eat is either breakfast or lunch, or even during happy hours. You'll find appetizers and different food on specials that they'll have is one way to save money. Also looking at free days for museums or parks. We do a lot of hiking, which is free and gets us out and exploring areas. And I think I'm a huge fan of the hiking.
But we also research if we're going to be in a state for quite a bit of time, like we were in Texas for quite a bit this last winter. We researched and got their state park pass, which saved us a lot of money going to various different state parks and hiking for saving on the daily passes and sometimes on the camping itself. We also try to look at discount apps like Groupon or anything else that can give you some discounts on items or going out to eat or parks or amusement parks or anything like that.
And also we started looking, which we hadn't planned it this way, but we're glad now with the way the gas and fuel prices are currently, is we're glad we're stationary here for a month or two in Wisconsin, as the diesel prices are absolutely through the roof and crazy. So not moving as fast is definitely one way. And we found that we don't like to move fast to begin with. We like to stay for a week or 2 or month stays in places so that we can learn where the locals go, which is another cost saving tip, because most of the time if you're in a touristy area, the prices of the food and drinks are higher. But if you find out where the locals go, normally it's cheaper and better food.
Yeah, most definitely. And so now to switch a little bit to go into the entrepreneurial mindset, I know you guys both had full careers and then you stopped and you're officially retired from those careers. You've got all this time on your hand and you switched from being in a sticks and bricks to now being in an RV and traveling. It sounds like, from what I know of you guys, that you got an itch to do something. Talk to me about your YouTube channel, why you started it, and what it's about.
Well, originally we started the YouTube channel because we had gotten our RV in April of 2020, right when the pandemic hit and we went into lockdown. All of our family and friends, everybody wanted to see the RV and they were super excited about our adventures. So we formed our YouTube channel, Chasing RV Sunshine, and it just expanded from there, where all of a sudden I was out in a grocery store about 2 or 3 months after starting the channel and ran into a friend, and they told us that we were the only reason that they were getting out of the house. They had their elderly mother staying with them now, and the only adventures they'd been taking during the pandemic so far were stuff that we were doing with the RV, which ended up, giving us purpose. And knowing that the people that couldn't get out of their houses, that they could see what we were doing and possibly letting them come along on our adventures with us. My dad is in a wheelchair, and he originally thought he was going to be coming along with us on these adventures and was going to be our navigator. But then he finally realized he can't get into this particular RV, where we are aware that there are handicap accessible ones. But he is coming along with us now on all of our adventures and watches every week and leaves comments as well, which is pretty awesome because a lot of people that have YouTube channels say that their families never watch.
You started making content and doing content creation to share with friends and family that couldn't get out with you. Has it opened your eyes to other possibilities of things that it could turn into?
Yes, we now are going to be starting actually this week promoting a program for donations that help rebuild shattered lives of survivors and coworkers affected by in-line duty deaths of law enforcement officers. It's called COPS, and it's concerns of police survivors. And this program helps not only the families of officers killed in the line of duty, but also helps coworkers deal with the tragic loss of a law enforcement officer. This is obviously near and dear to our hearts as we are former law enforcement, and we believe in backing the blue and doing anything that we possibly can to help those that are still in law enforcement, as they have some of the toughest jobs in the world, and we are grateful for our careers. We're very blessed, but I believe that people really need to look and help officers out now that are doing this, and we're going to try to promote that as best as possible through our channel now.
Very cool. It sounds like there's a definite purpose behind the content you're creating, and that helps because sometimes the hours can be long, and turning on the camera, sometimes it just doesn't, you don't want to do it, but having a purpose behind it is definitely motivating. What has been some of the hardest parts about getting into content creation?
Figuring out how to actually talk on camera. Neither one of us ever liked to be in the limelight or on the news for news interviews or anything like that during our careers. And now it's just trying to be natural and being ourselves, and to try to forget that the camera's even on, and just to make sure that our journey is something that is fun and lighthearted. And that's why we went with the name Chasing RV Sunshine, is because you can't always control the weather, as most people like to chase 70 degrees, but at least you can find your own sunshine, and no matter what you're doing.
What was the transition like going from full-time work to full-time retirement?
Well, it's very interesting. Like you say, when you're working, you're always making plans on a daily basis. You always have to be somewhere on time when you're working. And not having that was kind of hard to get used to. Again, like you said, it kind of puts you in vacation mode in that you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. And it's also weird because you really lose track of what day of the week it is or what the date is. So that's kind of strange.
It took us a long time to stop looking over our shoulders, like our former departments were going to come back and say, "That's enough, you two, get back to work," and make us come back. But that didn't happen, and now we're finally realizing they're not going to be finding us.
So looking back at the journey that you've taken to get to the point of full-time RV travel and being able to financially support it, what are some pieces of advice you would give to someone else? And maybe those pieces of advice would change if you were 20 years old versus 45 years old. But what things have you learned that you would encourage people to do, and or what things have you learned that you'd say, hey, maybe you should do this a different way?
I would definitely start, no matter what age you are, look at yourself and look at accountability, and start paying yourself right now, which means start saving, start looking at ways to cut down debt, and setting money aside for your actual retirement.
I think that should start as soon as you know this is the lifestyle you want to take, whether you're 25 or 45. That's the time you want to just start making the plans for it. And I don't think there's any right or wrong reason to start doing this or time to do it. But when you do decide you want to do it, I think that's time to start planning for it.
So looking forward from here on out with just Joel and Deb's life and also Chasing RV Sunshine, what does success look like for you guys in the future?
Ooh, that's a good
Yeah,
question,
that's a
Josh.
good question. I think success is continuing our journey on this full time life. Staying within budget is definitely one of our things, and finding that long term goal of the condo we want to have somewhere, and also to give back and have purpose.
Awesome. Very cool. I like that. The giving back, having purpose, and then finding a place to land. It's interesting to think about, just reflecting back on my life and seasons of life. It's really easy to get in the mindset of, hey, we're going to buy this forever home, or we're going to do this thing, and that's going to be it for the next 80 years. And I think more and more people are waking up to the fact that doing something for 80 years is definitely the exception and not the rule. People are changing careers far more frequently. It's much easier to move around. And now with the pandemic, the blessing coming out of that is that all of these jobs that were in person that didn't need to be are now remote. And we're having more robust ways to connect to the internet on the road and being able to allow folks to be geographically where they want to be, while also still contributing in a meaningful manner through connection over the internet. And I think it's really cool that you guys have designed your life. You were in one season, you knew you were going to change and had a goal to get there, that you designed what you were doing then to support what you're doing now, and also set it up so that you can continue forward, that your perpetual movement is sustainable. I think that's really cool. And I love showcasing that there's multiple ways to achieve financial stability in this lifestyle, because there's a lot of people that are saying, yeah, I can't afford an RV. I can't afford to travel. Well, it's a game of compromises. What are you willing to give up either now or later? And also living arrangements. You can buy a rig for $15,000. It depends on what you want to live in. There's so many options. And I think you guys are a good example of showing what do you want to do, find that end goal, and then figure out how to accomplish it. So I really thank you for coming on the RV Entrepreneur podcast and sharing your story of becoming debt-free and planning for full-time RV travel in a way that allows you to sustain it, that you have flexibility and mobility to change things up.
Yeah, we're super excited and happy that we could join you. And we're saying we're absolutely loving the RV lifestyle. And if you set a budget and stick to it, no matter what it is, you're going to be able to get out here and enjoy the freedom that RV life brings you.
The key is to being flexible and adaptable, but staying within your budget whenever possible.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Awesome. Joel and Deb, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks you for having us.
I hope you guys enjoyed that episode with Joel and Deb and had some good takeaways. I think it's really cool, again, to hear how they were so diligent in planning for their goal. It was happenstance that they came across this idea of living full-time RVing because someone else was kind of ragging on it. And they're like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. And they were able to plan for it and budget for it and make it so that when they left, they're 100% debt-free and able to travel and explore without debt hanging over their head. If you've never been debt-free, it's a freeing experience, and there's just something magical about not having to owe anyone anything. And I think that, all accompanied with the freedom of RVing and be able to travel and move and the flexibility of it, they've got to be ecstatic, and that's why they're chasing RV Sunshine. So if you're interested in connecting with Deb or Joel, make sure you check out the links to all of their social medias in the episode description. And if you want to connect with other RV entrepreneurs, make sure you check out our Facebook group. The RVentrepreneur.com/Facebook group will take you there. If you have any questions for me or the rest of the RV Life team, you can reach us at rve@rvlife.com. And with that, we'll see you on the next episode.